I woke up to the sterile brightness of hospital fluorescent lights, the relentless beeping of a heart monitor hammering into my skull like a countdown to something I couldn't quite name. My head throbbed with a pain so sharp it felt like my brain was splitting in two. I tried to lift my hand to touch my face, but even that small movement sent waves of agony through my body. Through my blurred vision, I could make out a figure in scrubs leaning over me, her voice urgent but somehow distant. "Laura, can you hear me? Try to stay with us." I wanted to respond, but my mouth felt filled with cotton. My tongue was heavy, uncooperative. All I could manage was a whisper that barely qualified as sound. "My family. They wanted a jet." The words didn't make sense even to me, but they were the only truth I could grasp in that moment. Everything else was fragments. Shattered glass. A hand raised in anger. The deafening crack as my head connected with the gilded mirror in our mansion's foyer. The screams of party guests. The look of pure hatred in my father's eyes. Before I drift back into unconsciousness, before the morphine pulls me under again, I need you to understand something. If you've ever felt like your dreams didn't matter, like your value was measured only by what you could provide for others, like you were drowning in a sea of other people's expectations while everyone around you pretended not to notice, then this story is for you. But before we go any further, if you're finding value in this story, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment below telling me about your own journey to reclaiming your life. Your engagement helps me reach others who need to hear this message. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I was 8 years old the first time I truly understood that I was different in my family's eyes. Not special different. Invisible different. It was a Tuesday evening and I sat cross-legged on the floor of my bedroom carefully filling out my science project worksheet about the solar system. I'd spent weeks preparing for this, checking out library books with my own library card, making careful notes in my notebook with the unicorn on the cover. Downstairs, I could hear my mother's laughter, bright and musical in a way it never was when she spoke to me. Then my brother Daniel's voice, loud and confident even at age 10. He was showing them something, probably another mediocre art project that would be praised like it belonged in the Smithsonian. I finished my worksheet and bounded down the stairs, clutching my paper with both hands. My heart raced with excitement. Maybe this time they would see me. Really see me. "Mom, Dad, look. I finished my solar system project early." Mrs. Henderson said mine was the most detailed in the class. My mother glanced up from where she sat on the couch next to Daniel, her arm wrapped around his shoulders. She gave me the smile she reserved for interruptions, the one that never quite reached her eyes. "That's nice, sweetheart. Why don't you go put it on the refrigerator?" My father didn't even look up from the newspaper spread across his lap. "Laura, we're having family time with your brother right now. He needs our support for his soccer tryouts tomorrow." Daniel, the golden child, smirked at me from his privileged position in our mother's embrace. That smirk would become his signature expression toward me over the years, a constant reminder that in the hierarchy of the Sterling family, I would always rank below him. I placed my project on the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like a strawberry. It stayed there for 2 days before my mother took it down to make room for a grocery list. I found it weeks later, crumpled at the bottom of the recycling bin. The years that followed established a pattern that would define my childhood and adolescence. When I was 12, I won the regional science fair with a project on water filtration systems. The trophy was small, brass-colored plastic, but to me it represented hundreds of hours of work of teaching myself concepts that my teachers said were too advanced for middle school. My father brought it home from the school ceremony I'd attended alone because they were all at Daniel's golf tournament. He'd come 2 hours late. He placed my trophy on the corner of his desk in his home office without a word. 3 days later, I noticed it had been moved to the garage, sitting on a shelf next to old paint cans and forgotten tools. Meanwhile, Daniel's third-place golf trophy was given pride of place in our formal living room's glass cabinet, spotlit like it was the freaking Stanley Cup. "Laura, you're naturally gifted," my mother told me when I asked why they didn't come to my awards ceremony. "You don't need the same level of support as Daniel. He struggles more, so he needs us to be there for him. You understand, don't you? You're such a good girl." I was a good girl. That was the problem. I was so good at being good that they mistook my competence for not needing love, my resilience for not needing support, my independence for not deserving their attention. High school brought new dimensions to the inequality. While Daniel received a generous allowance, a brand new car for his 16th birthday, and unlimited funds for his social life, I was given $20 a week and told I was lucky to get that much. when I wanted to attend a summer program at MIT for aspiring scientists, a program that could have changed the trajectory of my entire academic career, my father's response was swift and final. "We can't afford it, Laura. We're already paying for Daniel's private soccer coaching. That's an investment in his future." "But Dad, this program costs less than 2 months of Daniel's coaching, and it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They rarely accept high school juniors." He looked at me over his reading glasses, his expression one of mild irritation, as if I were a fly buzzing around his head. "Laura, life isn't always fair. You need to learn to make do with what you have. Besides, you're smart enough that you don't need expensive programs. You'll figure it out on your own. You always do." That summer, while Daniel attended a luxury soccer camp in California, complete with Olympic coaches and beachfront accommodations, I worked at the local bookstore shelving returns and helping customers find the latest bestsellers. I saved every penny, depositing it into a savings account I'd opened with my grandmother's birthday money. Each dollar felt like a brick in the foundation of my future escape. By the time I was ready for college, I'd saved $8,000. It wasn't enough for a full 4 years, but combined with scholarships and loans, it would get me started. I'd worked so hard for it, spending my weekends and summers surrounded by the smell of old books and the quiet understanding of Mrs. Chen, the bookstore owner, who'd become more of a mother figure to me than Catherine Sterling ever had. One evening in late July, right before I was supposed to leave for college orientation, my father called me into his office. The room smelled of leather and expensive cigars, a scent that I'd come to associate with disappointment and dismissal. "Laura, sit down. We need to discuss something." I sat in the chair across from his massive mahogany desk, the same chair where I'd sat for every uncomfortable conversation of my teenage years. My stomach knotted with a familiar sense of dread. "Your brother needs a car. His old one is having mechanical issues and it's not safe for him to drive. We found a suitable replacement, but we're short on funds right now. The market has been unpredictable." I stared at him, not quite believing where this conversation was heading. "Dad, I'm leaving for college in 3 weeks. "Yes, and you have loans and scholarships. You'll be fine. Daniel needs reliable transportation for his job interviews. He's at a crucial point in his career development." Career development. He graduated 6 months ago and hasn't applied to a single job. He's been playing video games in the basement. My father's face reddened, a warning sign I'd learned to recognize. "Don't you dare speak about your brother that way. He's been struggling with the transition to adulthood. He needs our support. You, on the other hand, have always been self-sufficient." "I'm self-sufficient because I had to be. Because you never gave me any other choice." The words burst out of me before I could stop them, years of resentment finally finding their voice. But my father simply stood up, straightening his suit jacket with the same cool composure he used in his business dealings. "We need $8,000 for Daniel's car. You'll transfer it from your account tomorrow. Consider it your contribution to this family, which has provided for you your entire life. That's my money. I earned it. That's supposed to be for my education, for my future. Your future will be fine, Laura. You always land on your feet. Daniel needs this opportunity more than you need that money sitting in a bank account." I tried to fight it. I really did. I spoke to bank representatives, but since I was still technically a minor when the account was opened, my parents were listed as co-signers. They had legal access to the funds. Within 24 hours, my entire savings account had been drained. $8,000 representing 2 years of my life vanished to purchase a used BMW for my brother who couldn't be bothered to get a job. When I confronted Daniel about it, he laughed. Actually laughed. "Come on, Sis. Don't be so dramatic. It's just money. You'll make more. Besides, someone in this family should drive something decent. You wouldn't want me showing up to interviews in that piece of junk you call a car, would you? How would that reflect on the family?" I stood in my childhood bedroom that night, looking at the faded posters on my walls, the bookshelf crammed with volumes I'd collected from thrift stores and library sales, the desk where I'd studied until my eyes burned, and I made myself a promise. Someday, somehow, I would be free of them. I would build a life where my value wasn't determined by how much I could sacrifice for people who would never see me as anything more than a convenient resource. College was supposed to be my escape, but even 200 miles away, their demands followed me. Phone calls requesting money for Daniel's car insurance, for repairs to the summer house, for their investment opportunities that always seemed to require my participation. I worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 gigapascals, sending money home while surviving on ramen noodles and dollar store groceries, telling myself it would be worth it when I graduated and could finally be free. Then in my senior year, everything changed in a way I never could have anticipated. The letter arrived on a Tuesday in October, delivered by a private courier service to my campus mailbox. The envelope was heavy cream-colored paper, expensive and official-looking, with a law firm's name embossed in gold lettering in the corner. Whitmore, Harrison and Associates, Philadelphia. Inside was a letter informing me that my maternal grandfather, Arthur Gable, had passed away 6 months earlier. I'd barely known him. He'd been estranged from my mother for reasons that were never fully explained to me, though I gathered there had been some kind of falling out related to her marriage to my father. The few times I'd met him as a child, he'd been kind to asking me questions about my interests with genuine curiosity, but those visits had stopped when I was around 9 years old. The letter went on to explain that Arthur had left me, and only me, as the sole beneficiary of a trust fund. The exact amount would be disclosed at a meeting with his attorney, Mr. Harrison, but I was advised that it was a substantial sum, requiring immediate attention to various legal and financial matters. My hands shook as I read the letter. A trust fund. For me. From a grandfather I barely remembered, but who apparently remembered me. I called the number on the letterhead, immediately standing outside the Student Union building in the cold October, whined my breath forming clouds in the air. Harrison speaking. The voice was older, measured, professional. Mr. Harrison, this is Laura Sterling. I just received your letter about my grandfather. There was a pause, then a warmth entered his voice that surprised me. Miss Sterling, I'm very glad you called. I've been handling your grandfather's affairs for over 30 years, and he spoke of you often, especially in his final months. He wanted to ensure you were provided for. I don't understand. We barely knew each other. That wasn't by his choice, I assure you. Arthur tried to maintain contact with you, but your parents made that difficult. However, he kept track of your achievements, your scholarships, your academic awards. He was very proud of you. Tears stung my eyes. A stranger, a grandfather I barely remembered, had been paying attention to my life when my own parents couldn't be bothered. What happens now? I asked. Now you need to come to Philadelphia. We have a great deal to discuss, and some of it is quite sensitive. When can you make the trip? I went that weekend taking a Greyhound bus because I couldn't afford the train. Mr. Harrison's office was in a historic building in Center City, all dark wood and law books and the smell of old paper. He was in his 70s, I guessed, with silver hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Your grandfather was a remarkable man, he told me, gesturing for me to sit in a leather chair across from his desk. A brilliant chemist who developed several revolutionary processes in polymer science. He built a successful company, Gable Chemical Innovations, from the ground up. I had no idea, I said honestly. My mother had never spoken of her father's work, his life, anything about him really. I'm not surprised. Arthur's later years were difficult. His company was appropriated by your father, Richard Sterling, through means that Arthur believed were unethical and possibly illegal. I sat up straighter. What do you mean appropriated? Mr. Harrison pulled out a folder thick with documents. That's something we'll need to discuss in detail. But first you need to know what you're inheriting. The trust fund currently contains approximately $2 million. The room spun. I gripped the arms of the chair, certain I'd misheard. I'm sorry, did you say million? Yes. Your grandfather established this trust when you were born, and he contributed to it regularly throughout your life. It was his way of ensuring you would have opportunities, freedom, and security. The funds become fully accessible to you on your 22nd birthday, which is in 6 months, I believe. 6 months, I repeated numbly. However, he continued, his expression growing more serious. There are some conditions and some information you need to be aware of. Your grandfather left very specific instructions regarding when and how you were to learn about this inheritance and about the truth of what happened between him and your father. Over the next 3 hours, Mr. Harrison told me a story that shattered whatever fragile illusions I'd still held about my family. My grandfather had indeed built a revolutionary chemical company developing a polymer process that was years ahead of its time. In his early 60s, he'd made the mistake of bringing Richard Sterling, his daughter's charming new husband, into the business as a partner, hoping to build a family legacy. Within 2 years, my father had used legal maneuvering, forged documents, and careful manipulation to push Arthur out of his own company. By the time Arthur realized what was happening, Sterling Industries had absorbed Gable Chemical Innovations, and my father had rewritten the narrative to make it appear that he was the genius behind the innovations, while Arthur was merely a figurative scientist who couldn't hack it in the business world. Your grandfather tried to fight it, mister. Harrison said, his voice heavy with old anger. But Richard had been methodical. He had lawyers' money, and most importantly, he had Catherine. Your mother chose your father's wealth and status over her own father's truth. Arthur was devastated. Why didn't he go public? Why didn't he sue? He did sue, but quietly. A subsidiary company of Sterling Industries had been licensing Arthur's original patents without proper authorization. The lawsuit was settled out of court for a substantial sum money that was placed directly into your trust fund. Arthur didn't want to destroy his daughter completely, even though she'd turned her back on him. He hoped that one day you might be in a position to learn the truth and decide what to do with it. Mr. Harrison opened another folder, this one containing photos, documents, and a small cassette tape. He left you this. He called it his insurance policy, his truth. He wanted you to have a choice when the time came about whether to seek justice or simply take the money and live your life free from the Sterling family drama. I took the folder with trembling hands. Inside were laboratory notebooks in my grandfather's neat handwriting copies of original patent applications with his signature and what appeared to be forged versions with my father's name. There were photographs of my grandfather in his lab, pride evident in his face, as he held up test tubes and pointed to chemical formulas on whiteboards. And there were letters, dozens of them addressed to me but never sent. He wrote to you constantly, mister, Harrison said softly, especially after your mother cut off contact. He followed your life from a distance through school records that he somehow managed to access through newspaper clippings when you won your science fair. He was so proud of you, Laura. He saw himself in you. He wanted you to know that. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. I wept for the grandfather I'd never really known, for the relationship that had been stolen from me, for the years of feeling worthless and unseen when someone out there had been watching, caring, documenting my small victories. There's one more thing, mister, Harrison said, waiting until I'd composed myself. The cassette tape. Arthur recorded a conversation with your father years ago, before everything fell apart completely. Richard didn't know he was being recorded. Arthur kept it as evidence, hoping he'd never need to use it. Now he's left that decision to you. I looked at the small cassette tape, so antiquated in an age of digital everything, yet holding what might be the key to everything. Before you listen to it, mister, Harrison continued, you need to understand the position you're in. You have money, real money enough to be completely independent. You have evidence of fraud and theft that could potentially bring down Sterling Industries and send your father to prison. But you also have a choice to simply walk away, take your inheritance, and never look back. Your grandfather wanted you to have that choice. He didn't want you to feel obligated to fight his battles. Can I take all of this with me? I asked, my voice hoarse from crying. Everything in this folder is yours. I've made copies for the firm's records, but these originals belong to you. I should also tell you that I'm at your service should you need legal counsel. Your grandfather set aside funds to retain our firm on your behalf for whatever you might need. I left Philadelphia that evening with a backpack full of explosive documents and a head spinning with possibilities. On the bus ride back to campus, I stared out the window at the darkening landscape and tried to process everything I'd learned. My grandfather had loved me. He'd seen me. He'd believed in me enough to leave me not just money but options. Power. Truth. But I couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. My family didn't know about the inheritance yet, but they would find out eventually. The question was whether I told them on my terms or waited for them to discover it themselves. Every instinct I'd developed over 21 years of surviving in the Sterling household told me that the moment they knew I had money, they would find a way to take it from me. I was right to be worried, but I had no idea how bad it would actually get. I managed to keep the inheritance secret for almost 2 months. I told no one, not even my roommate Jessie, though she knew something was different about me. I was quieter, more distracted, constantly running scenarios in my head about what would happen when my family found out. The truth came out the week before Thanksgiving break, and not in any way I could have anticipated. I came back to my apartment after class to find my mother sitting in the living room, perched on our thrift store couch like it might give her a disease. She looked completely out of place in her Chanel suit and perfectly styled hair, surrounded by our mismatched furniture and Jessie's collection of ironic posters. Mother, what are you doing here? Her smile was tight, controlled, the one she used when she was furious but had to maintain appearances. Is that any way to greet your mother? I drove all this way to see you, and that's the reception I get. I'm sorry, I'm just surprised. You didn't call. Well, I wanted to surprise you. Can we talk somewhere private? Jessie, who'd been sitting at the dining table pretending to study immediately, grabbed her laptop. I've got to get to the library anyway. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Sterling. Her tone was polite, but I caught the look she gave me on her way out, a silent question asking if I'd be okay. As soon as the door closed, my mother's facade cracked. I received a very interesting phone call this morning from Nancy Whitmore. Her husband Paul is a senior partner at Whitmore Harrison and Associates. Apparently, you've been meeting with their attorneys regarding a trust fund from your grandfather. My stomach dropped. How did you really think you could hide something like this from us? From your own family. $2 million, Laura. And you were just going to keep it to yourself. It's my money. Grandfather left it to me. Your grandfather was a bitter, vindictive man who tried to destroy our family. Everything he built with your father's business acumen. Richard made him rich, and Arthur repaid him with lawsuits and slander. I'd heard my father's version of events so many times that I'd half believed it myself despite what Mr. Harrison had told me. But now, seeing my mother's desperation, her barely contained fury at my good fortune, I realized the truth with crystal clarity. They'd been lying. About everything. That's not what the documents say. That's not what grandfather's patents say. That's not what his tape-recorded conversation with Dad says. My mother's face went white. What tape? The one where Dad admits to stealing grandfather's work. Where he laughs about how easy it was to manipulate an honest man. Where he says, and I quote, "The world doesn't care about souls, Arthur. It cares about winners. You're a brilliant scientist, but a terrible businessman. I did what was necessary. That company is mine. Your legacy is mine." I'd listened to that tape exactly once in the privacy of my bedroom, my hands shaking so badly I could barely operate the old cassette player I'd borrowed from the university's media library. Hearing my father's younger voice full of arrogance and contempt, admitting to everything Mr. Harrison had told me had made me physically ill. I'd run to the bathroom and vomited, then sat on the cold tile floor for an hour, my world rearranged into a new and terrible shape. My mother stood up, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. You don't understand what you're dealing with. That money isn't yours. It's family money. It should be used for family purposes. Like Daniel's car, like your summer house, like Dad's fleet of luxury vehicles. You ungrateful little bitch. The words were said quietly, matter-of-factly, as if she were commenting on the weather. After everything we've done for you, after we raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head, this is how you repay us. You did the legal minimum required of parents. You gave me food and shelter and nothing else. You took my college savings. You've taken every opportunity from me to give to Daniel. You've made me feel worthless and invisible my entire life. And now you want to take this too. We want what's rightfully ours. Your father built his empire and you benefited from that. You lived in luxury. Daniel lived in luxury. I lived in the servants' quarters of your attention. My mother slapped me. The crack of her palm against my cheek echoed in the small apartment. My face burned, but I didn't move, didn't even raise my hand to touch the spot where her handprint was surely forming. You will sign over control of that trust fund to your father. He'll invest it properly and ensure it's used for the family's benefit. In return, we'll welcome you back into the family and treat you like the daughter you've always wanted to be. No. Excuse me. I said no. The money is mine. The trust is mine. And I'm done being your ATM machine with a pulse. My mother's expression shifted through several emotions, shock, disbelief, fury, before settling on cold calculation. You're making a terrible mistake. Your father won't take this well. I don't care. You should. You don't know what he's capable of when someone gets in his way. She left then, her designer heels clicking on the cheap linoleum floor. I stood in the middle of the living room, my cheeks still stinging, and felt something shift inside me. Fear, yes. But also something else. Something that felt almost like power. Jessie came back 20 minutes later with coffee and takeout. She's gone. At my nod, she set everything down and pulled me into a hug. Tell me everything. So I did. I told her about the inheritance, about my grandfather, about the documents and the tape, and my parents' reaction. Jessie listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly horrified. Laura, you need to be careful. Like really careful. People have done crazy things for a lot less than $2 million. I know. Do you? Because I don't think you do. You've spent your whole life trying to believe your family isn't as bad as they are. But what your mom just did? Coming here demanding your money, slapping you. That's not normal family conflict. That's abuse. I know I said again, but this time the words felt heavier, more real. What are you going to do? I don't know. But I'm not giving them the money. Over the next few weeks, the pressure intensified. My father called daily, alternating between threats and attempts at manipulation. My mother sent long emails detailing all the sacrifices they'd made for me, complete with receipts for childhood expenses and a calculated total of what I owed them. Daniel left voicemails calling me selfish and stuck up, accusing me of abandoning the family in pursuit of money. The attacks became more creative. They contacted my university, claiming I was having a mental health crisis and needed to be placed under family supervision. Only Mr. Harrison's swift legal intervention prevented that disaster. They tried to access my bank accounts. They called my employers, telling them I was unreliable. They even contacted some of my professors, suggesting I was under undue stress and might be unstable. Through it all, I held firm, but I was terrified. These were people I'd known my entire life, people who were supposed to love me, and they were systematically trying to destroy my life because I'd refused to hand over money that was rightfully mine. Mr. Harrison advised me to get a restraining order, but I hesitated. Some part of me still couldn't quite believe they'd actually hurt me physically. They were manipulative, yes. Emotionally abusive, definitely. But violent, that seemed like a bridge too far. I was wrong about that too. The incident that would change everything happened at the Sterling Industries annual holiday gala, an event I'd been guilted into attending despite every instinct screaming at me to stay away. It was the first week of December, and my mother had called with an olive branch. "Laura, darling, let's put all this ugliness behind us. It's the holidays. Come to the gala. Bring a friend if it makes you feel more comfortable. Your father wants to make peace." I should have known better. I really should have. But some desperate part of me that was still an 8-year-old girl putting her science project on the refrigerator wanted to believe that maybe somehow they actually did want to reconcile. Jessie agreed to come with me as backup, wearing a thrift store dress we'd modified to look expensive. She looked amazing, and more importantly, she looked ready for trouble. The gala was held at the Sterling Estate, the massive colonial revival mansion where I'd grown up feeling like an unwanted guest. The ballroom glittered with chandelier light, and women in designer gowns mingled with men in tuxedos. It was the kind of event I'd attended dozens of times growing up, always feeling like I was wearing the wrong thing, standing in the wrong place, existing wrong. My father spotted me immediately. He crossed the room with the confident stride of a man who owned everything and everyone in it. Up close, I could see the tightness around his eyes, the barely controlled rage beneath his charming smile. "Laura, how good of you to come. And you've brought a friend. This is Jessie, my roommate from school." Charming. He didn't even look at her. His eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. "We need to talk. Privately. Anything you have to say to me can be said in front of Jessie. I don't think you want that, sweetheart. Trust me." There was something in his tone, a barely veiled threat that made Jessie's hand tighten on my arm. But we were surrounded by people, by witnesses. What could he possibly do? Then I guess we have nothing to talk about. I tried to move past him, but he grabbed my elbow, his fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. "Don't walk away from me. Not here. Not in front of these people. Let go of me. We're going to have a conversation about your future and your responsibilities to this family. And you're going to listen." He dragged me toward his study, still maintaining that pleasant smile for any guests who might glance our way. Jessie followed her phone out, and I realized she was filming. Smart girl. In the study, my father finally dropped the pretense. 2 months. I've given you 2 months to come to your senses. Instead, you've embarrassed this family, spread lies about me, and acted like an ungrateful brat. I haven't spread any lies. I haven't told anyone anything. I've simply refused to give you money that isn't yours. That money came from the company I built. Arthur Gable was nothing but a dreamer with a chemistry set. I turned his amateur tinkering into a fortune. You stole his patents and pushed him out of his own company. I saved his company from bankruptcy. I made him rich. Then why is there a tape recording of you admitting you stole everything from him? The color drained from his face, then rushed back in an angry red flush. You little bitch. You really are your grandfather's creature, aren't you? Fine. You want to play hardball? We can play hardball. He pulled out a folder from his desk, thick with papers. This is a petition for guardianship. I'm filing it on Monday. The argument is simple. You're clearly not mentally competent to manage significant assets. You've shown signs of paranoia, instability, and reality distortion. Multiple witnesses will testify to your erratic behavior. You'll be placed under a conservatorship with me as your guardian, and I'll have complete control over your assets. My blood ran cold. You can't do that. I'm not incompetent. Can't I? You'd be amazed what money and the right lawyers can accomplish. By the time we're done, you'll be lucky if you have access to enough money for a cup of coffee without my permission. I'll fight it. I have lawyers too. With what money? The trust isn't active until your 22nd birthday, and I'll have you declared incompetent before then. You're a college student working 3 part-time jobs. You can't afford the kind of legal battle I can wage. Arthur's firm is representing me. They're already retained. He laughed, but it was a cold, ugly sound. Harrison. That decrepit old fool. I'll bury him in motions and discovery requests. This will drag on for years, cost you everything you have, and in the end you'll still lose. Because that's what happens when you go up against someone like me. You lose. Is that what you told grandfather before you destroyed him? The slap came so fast I didn't even see it coming. My father's hand connected with the side of my face with enough force to snap my head to the side. Stars exploded across my vision. You don't get to speak his name. You don't get to pretend you knew him. You're just a stupid girl who got lucky, and now you think you can stand up to me. You're nothing, Laura. You've always been nothing. A burden we tolerated because Catherine felt obligated. But you're not even her daughter, not really. You're just another one of Arthur's failed experiments. The words registered dimly through the ringing in my ears. The room tilted, and I grabbed the edge of his desk for balance. Jesse was shouting something, but the sound seemed far away. Then I was moving, stumbling toward the door, needing to get out to get away. My father grabbed my arm again, spinning me around, and I jerked away from him instinctively. The movement sent me off balance. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the carpet. For a moment I thought I'd catch myself. Then my shoulder hit something hard and cold. The antique mirror in the foyer. The one that had been in the Sterling family for 4 generations, worth more than everything I'd ever owned combined. It shattered. The sound was enormous, impossible, like the end of a world. Shards of silvered glass exploded outward, and I was falling my head, connecting with the marble floor with a sickening crack that I felt more than heard. Through dimming vision, I saw my father standing over me, his face, a mask of fury and fear. I saw Daniel frozen in the doorway, his mouth open in shock. I saw my mother pushing through the crowd of horrified guests, her hands reaching not for me but for my father, pulling him back, hissing something I couldn't hear. I saw Jessie kneeling beside me, her phone still recording tears streaming down her face as she screamed for someone to call an ambulance. And then I saw nothing at all. Which brings us back to the hospital room, to the fluorescent lights and the beeping machines, and the realization that my family had finally literally tried to destroy me. The doctor who examined me said I had a severe concussion, 2 cracked ribs from hitting the mirror frame, and multiple lacerations from the glass. I was lucky, she said. A few inches different, and I could have had a serious brain injury, or severed an artery. Lucky. That's what she called it. Sarah, the social worker assigned to my case, had a different word for it. Assault, she said, sitting beside my hospital bed the morning after the incident. What happened to you was assault and battery. The police need to be notified. It was an accident. I fell. Did you? Because the young woman who came in with you, Jessie, she has video of your father striking you and then you falling. She has audio of him threatening you. This wasn't an accident, Laura. This was violence. I closed my eyes, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilling over. He's my father. That makes it worse, not better. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to have your voice heard. Will you let me help you? It was the kindness in her voice that broke me. Not the pity I'd expected, but genuine care from a stranger who had no obligation to me at all. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I'll tell you everything. And I did. I told Sarah about the inheritance, about years of emotional abuse and financial exploitation, about my father's theft, of my grandfather's work, about the threats and manipulation, and finally the physical attack. I told her things I'd never said out loud to anyone, secrets I'd kept because I was ashamed, because I thought somehow it was my fault for not being a better daughter. Sarah listened without judgment, taking notes, occasionally asking questions for clarity. When I finally finished, she sat back in her chair and gave me a look that was equal parts sad and determined. Laura, I want you to know something. None of this is your fault. None of it. You were a child in an abusive household and you survived by adapting to impossible standards. That's not weakness. That's strength. But now you have a choice to make. You can press charges against your father, or you can let this go and hope it doesn't happen again. What would you do? I'd press charges. I'd protect myself and make sure he couldn't hurt me again. But that's my choice, not yours. Only you can decide what's right for you. I looked out the hospital window at the gray winter sky. Somewhere out there, my family was probably strategizing, planning their next move, figuring out how to spin this disaster in their favor. My father would claim I was hysterical, that I'd attacked him and injured myself in the process. My mother would play the concerned parent. Daniel would back up whatever story they told. But I had something they didn't account for. I had Jesse's video. I had the truth. And I had finally, after 21 years, reached the absolute limit of what I was willing to endure. I want to press charges, I said. I want to tell the police everything. Sarah smiled. Good. I'll make the call. 2 hours later, Detectives Miller and Davis arrived. They watched Jesse's video once and exchanged knowing looks. Clear assault, Detective Miller said. We'll bring him in today. The next morning, my father's mugshot was everywhere. CEO Richard Sterling arrested for assault. I stared at the image on my phone, this man who'd seemed so powerful reduced to disheveled hair and an orange jumpsuit. He looked smaller, diminished. Within days, he took a plea deal. 3 years probation, anger management, and a restraining order. But my mother wasn't done. 2 days after his arrest, her lawyers filed the guardianship petition, claiming I was mentally unstable and needed protection from myself. Mr. Harrison didn't sugarcoat it. She wants that money, and she'll do whatever it takes. I thought about my grandfather, his stolen legacy, the letters to me he'd written but never sent. 21 years of being invisible. I'm ready, I said. Let's bury them. We had 3 weeks to build our case. Jesse helped gather everything: medical records, showing suspicious childhood injuries, report cards, proving my excellence despite total parental neglect, bank statements, documenting their theft of my savings. And we had my grandfather's evidence of fraud. This will destroy Sterling Industries, Mr. Harrison warned. Your father could face more charges. Your family will lose everything. They took everything from my grandfather. From me. Why should I protect them? He nodded. Then let's do this. The courtroom was packed. My mother sat with her expensive lawyers, the picture of concerned parenthood in her navy suit. Daniel prepared to testify about my supposed instability. On my side, Mr. Harrison, Jesse, and the truth. Their lawyer painted me as paranoid and delusional. Daniel delivered an Oscar-worthy performance about how worried they all were. She used to be so sweet, he said with fake emotion. But after the inheritance, she became a different person. We just want to help her. Then it was our turn. Mr. Harrison distributed folders of evidence. Medical records, school records, financial exploitation documented across years. Witnesses testified: my old teacher, Mrs. Chen from the bookstore, Sarah, the social worker. Then came the audio recording. My grandfather's weak voice: Richard, please. Just admit what you did. My father's younger voice dripping with arrogance: the world doesn't care about souls, Arthur. It cares about winners. You're a brilliant scientist, but a terrible businessman. I did what was necessary. That company is mine. Your legacy is mine. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. My mother went pale. The judge's expression could have frozen hell. When my turn came to testify, my legs felt like water. But sitting in that witness box, looking at the courtroom, I didn't feel afraid anymore. I felt free. Miss Sterling, Mr. Harrison said gently, please tell the court why your mother should not be appointed as your guardian. I took a deep breath. Because she's never been my guardian, not really. She's been my warden. From the time I was a child, I was taught that my value came from what I could do for my brother, what I could sacrifice for the family, what I could give up to make their lives easier. I was smart, so they took that to mean I didn't need support. I was resilient, so they took that to mean I didn't need love. I was self-sufficient because they gave me no choice, and then they punished me for being independent. My voice grew stronger as I spoke, years of silence finally breaking free. They took my college savings to buy my brother a car. They pressured me to pay for their luxuries while I was living on ramen noodles. And when I inherited money from a grandfather who actually cared about me, who saw my worth and wanted to give me opportunities, they tried to take that too. Not because they thought I couldn't manage it, Because they wanted it for themselves. I looked directly at my mother. You raised me to be a tool, not a daughter. And when I finally became too useful, too valuable to ignore you, couldn't stand that you didn't control me anymore. So yes, Your Honor, I am mentally competent. I'm competent enough to finally see my family for what they really are. The judge took only 15 minutes to deliberate. When she returned, her expression was granite. I've practiced family law for 30 years, she said, and this is one of the most disturbing cases I've encountered. The guardianship petition is denied. Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order preventing Catherine Sterling, Richard Sterling, and Daniel Sterling from contacting Laura Sterling or making any claims on her assets. And I'm forwarding the evidence presented today to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into potential fraud and theft charges against Richard Sterling. My mother stood up, her composure finally cracking. This is outrageous. That money came from my father. It should have come to me. Your father explicitly chose to leave it to your daughter, the judge replied coldly. Perhaps you should reflect on why that is. Court is adjourned. I walked out of that courtroom with my head high, Jesse and Mr. Harrison on either side of me. Behind me, I could hear my mother's angry voice, Daniel's protests, their lawyers trying to calm them down. Outside, a crowd of reporters waited. I'd prepared for this moment knowing that the combination of my father's assault charges and now the fraud allegations would make this a major story. I stood on the courthouse steps, camera flashes going off around me, and spoke my truth to the world. My name is Laura Gable Sterling. For the first 21 years of my life, I was invisible to my family unless they needed something from me. Today, I want every person who's ever felt that way to know you are not crazy. You are not ungrateful. You deserve better. And you have the right to protect yourself even from family, especially from family who refuses to see your worth. I held up a copy of my grandfather's photo, the one of him in his laboratory. This man, Arthur Gable, was a brilliant scientist whose work was stolen by my father. He spent years in obscurity while Richard Sterling built an empire on stolen genius. But he never gave up on the truth, and he never gave up on me. Today, his legacy is finally being acknowledged. And I promise to spend the rest of my life honoring his memory by ensuring that no one else's truth gets buried under someone else's greed. The questions came fast and furious, but I'd said what I needed to say. I got into Mr. Harrison's car and let Jesse drive me back to the shelter where Maria and the other women greeted me with hugs and tears and pride. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The district attorney's office launched a formal investigation into Sterling Industries. Auditors uncovered decades of accounting irregularities and patent violations. Shareholders filed lawsuits. Within 3 months, the company declared bankruptcy. Richard Sterling was indicted on multiple counts of fraud, theft of intellectual property, and racketeering. Combined with his assault conviction, he was sentenced to 20 years in prison. I saw him once more before he went away in court for his sentencing. He looked at me with such hatred that it should have hurt. Instead, I felt nothing at all. Catherine and Daniel lost everything. The mansion was sold to pay legal fees and settlements. My mother moved to a small apartment in Florida, living off Social Security and the pity of former friends. Daniel, forced for the first time in his life to actually work, got a job at a car dealership. He sent me one email: "You destroyed everything." I wrote back, "Dad did that. I just told the truth." As for me, I waited until my 22nd birthday to access the full trust fund. The amount had grown with interest and the settlement money from Sterling Industries liquidation. The final total was $83 million. $83 million that represented my grandfather's genius, his suffering, and his faith in me. I could have taken it and disappeared, lived a life of luxury, and never looked back. But that's not what Arthur Gable would have wanted. That's not what I wanted either. 6 months after the trial, I stood on the balcony of a newly renovated building in Philadelphia, watching as workers put up the sign, "The Arthur Gable Institute for Applied Sciences," a nonprofit research center dedicated to supporting young scientists funded entirely by my grandfather's trust. The institute would provide grants, laboratory space, and mentorship to talented researchers who lacked financial resources or family support. It would publish papers under strict ethical guidelines. It would teach that integrity matters more than profit, that truth is worth fighting for, and that one person's genius should never be stolen by another's ambition. Mr. Harrison stood beside me, tears in his eyes. He would be so proud of you. I hope so. I'm trying to be worthy of what he gave me. You already are. The Institute's first award ceremony was held on what would have been my grandfather's 95th birthday. I presented a grant to a young marine biologist, developing sustainable water filtration systems for developing nations. She reminded me of myself at that age, brilliant, determined, and fighting for recognition in a world that wanted to keep her small. This is for everyone who's been told they're not good enough, I said in my speech. For everyone whose dreams have been dismissed, whose work has been stolen, whose light has been dimmed by people who should have lifted them up instead. Arthur Gable's legacy isn't a company or a fortune. It's the belief that every person deserves the chance to contribute their genius to the world. That's what we're building here. That's what we're protecting. As I looked out at the audience, I saw faces reflecting back everything I'd felt: hope, determination, the hunger to matter. These were my people. This was my family now. Late that night, alone in my apartment, I found a letter from my father. It had been forwarded through several addresses marked with prison stamps. I almost threw it away unread, but curiosity won out. The letter was short: "You're exactly like him. Stubborn, self-righteous, convinced of your own moral superiority. I hope you're happy with what you've done. You've destroyed your own family." I read it twice, then did something I never thought I'd be able to do. I smiled. I took the letter to a frame shop and had it professionally mounted. It hangs in my office at the Institute now, right above my grandfather's photograph, because he's right in a way. I am exactly like Arthur Gable. And that's the highest compliment I've ever received. If you're watching this, if you've made it this far in my story, I want you to know something. The power your family, your partner, your friends, anyone holds over you is only the power you give them. Your life, your future, your truth, they all belong to you. Not to the people who want to use you. Not to the people who want to control you. Not even to the people who claim they love you, but treat you like a resource instead of a person. It took me 21 years to learn that lesson. It took my grandfather's faith and a shattered mirror and the courage to finally say no. But I learned it, and now I'm living it. My name is Laura Gable. I'm the granddaughter of a brilliant man whose legacy was nearly stolen. Today, the fortune built on his stolen work funds a new generation of dreamers. That's my justice. That's my peace. What's yours? Have you ever had to stand up to family members who treated you as less than you deserved? Have you found the courage to set boundaries with people who claim to love you? Drop a comment below and share your story. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Every share helps us reach someone who might be struggling right now, someone who needs to know they're not alone. Together we can build a community where everyone's worth is recognized and everyone's truth matters. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing that change is possible. And thank you for being here.